So if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Mike. I'm a senior here at UNC, studying peace, war, and defense.
I'm also a senior at UNC. I'm Bethany, and I'm studying public policy in peace, war, and defense.
Hey guys, I'm Chloe. I'm a sophomore and I'm studying journalism here at UNC.
All right. So now we're going to start with our presentation.
So why don't you guys take a second here and talk to your teacher and talk amongst yourselves and tell us some of your favorite fairy tales, some of the ones you guys really like. And you can go ahead and type it into the chat. So we want to hear all about what you guys like before we start.
Okay.
Cinderella. Ooh,
Okay.
Cinderella.
That's a good one.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, yeah.
Goldilocks.
That's a good one.
Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
The Tale of William Tell.
Ooh, never heard of that one.
All right.
Peter Pan.
Very good one.
Goldilocks. Jack and the Beanstalk.
Mm.
More Harry Potter. More Jack and the Beanstalk. Peter Pan. Three Little Pigs. Jack and the Beanstalk. Frozen.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Harry Potter.
All right.
Sounds good. We like those too.
Yeah. So the fairy tale I'm going to do is from Afghanistan and Iran. And once upon a time, they were both together, but now they've split apart. So this is a popular story in both countries. And this is a little map here of the area. Shows here in the world where they're at, down here by India, and there's Afghanistan, and right next to it is Iran. So Persian fairy tales have a rich history, and they date back even before Islam. Some of these stories are 3,000-4,000 years old, and they're both for adults and for children. And they usually teach kind of morality and moral tales. So here's a couple pictures on the screen of two of the most famous storytellers. On the left, well, I was going to say the guy with the white beard, but they both have white beards. But the fellow on the left, that is Rumi. He's very, very famous. And the one on the right is Omar Khayyam, who's also very famous. And in fact, you even read some of these authors and some of their stories even when you become an adult in college. So, all right. A lot of these stories that have come from Persia have found their way into Europe and to the United States. And so a lot of similar themes, somewhat similar stories we have. So the story I'm going to tell you is called the tortoise named Bull on Back and the fox. So when I'm done, try to come up and figure out what story this is similar to that you probably already heard. Now, like every good fairy tale, they have to begin. And, we say once upon a time, but in Persian-speaking countries, they say yeki bud, yeki nabud. And that's how you know you're listening to a fairy tale. Okay, so this story is called Tortoise, Bull on the Back, and the Fox. Bull on the Back is the name of the turtle here. So, yeki bud, yeki nabud, or once upon a time, there was a very hardworking turtle named Bull on the Back. And Bull on the Back lived on a little farm, as you see here, and he was a farmer. And every spring, he would go ahead and plant some corn. Well, in the spring, he's planting some corn, and along comes a very sly fox. And the sly fox looks at him and looks at the corn and says, "God protect you and give you strong crops." And Bull on the Back says, "Well, thank you very much, Fox." And then the fox disappears. Later on in the summer, the crops are continuing to grow. Along comes the fox again. And he sees Bull on the Back weeding and taking care of his crops. And he says, "God protect you and give you a fine harvest." Once again, the turtle says, "Thank you." And off goes the fox. Later on in the fall, when the tortoise, Bull on the Back, is harvesting his last bag of corn, suddenly appears the fox. He says, "I'm here for my share of the harvest." Bull on the Back says, "What are you talking about, you rascal? You didn't help me at all do this." And the fox says, "Well, yeah, I did. I gave you all this praise and support, and I was here for you every time you were working. So I'm here for my share." And the tortoise says, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give you this. I did all the hard work. This is all everything I did. And the fox says, well, I'll tell you what. How about we have some sort of competition? Tortoise says, all right, we'll do a race. Tomorrow morning, we'll start here at the farm and we'll race to the mill where all your corn is at. And whoever gets there first gets all the corn. The turtle looked at him and said, all right, we can do that. That night, Bull on the back, the turtle, knew there's no way he was going to be able to win this race by himself. He just can't beat the fox. The fox is too fast. So he got together with all his friends and they came up with a plan in secret. The next morning, the fox and the turtle gathered for their race. And on the appointed time and the appointed signal, off they went. The fox knew he was going to win. In fact, he was laughing about it. There's no way the slow turtle can beat me. So as he's running through the woods, far ahead of Bull on the back, suddenly he looks up ahead and sees another turtle. Looks just, is that Bull on the back? How's that turtle beating me? So the fox suddenly speeds up, runs even faster, and passes the turtle. He says, you're not going to beat me. You're not going to beat me, turtle. He comes across to a creek, and he sees up ahead, once again, Bull on the back is just running along. The fox says, how is this possible? I've got to speed up. I've got to run even faster. So he takes off running even faster and passes Bull on the back. Finally, he comes to a clearing, and you can see the mill in the distance. And right there at the doorstep, just a few feet away, is Bull on the back. Once again, the turtle. How is this turtle beating me? So he keeps running as fast as he can, but he's just too far. And just as he gets right up to it, exhausted, Bull in the back crosses the finish line and wins. And the fox collapses, exhausted, on the ground, totally beaten. Doesn't know how this happened. What had happened was Bull in the back had gotten all his friends together, and they all look alike because they're turtles, and they had just played a trick on the fox. So the moral of the story is, if you're greedy, you're going to come to no end. And if you have lots of friends, you can accomplish anything. You can even beat a very, very fast fox. And that is the end.
See is covered up by this picture here. But basically, so we kind of usually think of storytelling as someone reading a book while a few people sit around and listen. But for the Cherokee, it can be like a grand event. Like, for example, this entire theater could be filled with people listening to someone tell a story. So where are the Eastern Band of Cherokee in North Carolina? So first of all, they're in North Carolina. So they're in the state that we're in right now. They're in very western North Carolina, kind of where the mountains are. And so the stories are typically told, kind of everyone's sitting around in a circle around the storyteller, but everyone's kind of looking at the fire and they're focusing on the fire. And so they don't get distracted by other things, other people. Everyone's just looking into the fire and listening to what the storyteller is saying to them. And folktales and storytelling are a very important part of Cherokee culture because they teach us stories about how to be better people. And they also sometimes explain how certain things came to be and the way that things are. The Cherokee didn't read or write for many years, so they used storytelling as a way to pass down their history because they didn't have any way to write it down. So instead, they just told stories to their children, who then told stories to their children. This picture here is a picture of the alphabet that they use now to write with, but they didn't have it for many years. So many of the stories are told using animal characters, very similar to the stories that we just heard. The picture on the left here of this bird and this water beetle, that's from their creation story. That's how they explain that the world was created. And then the picture on the right with the tortoise and the hare, they also have their own tortoise and the hare story in Cherokee that's very similar, basically the same to the story that we just heard. So here's a popular story in Cherokee called Yonder Mountain. only children, but also to adults, because it has some very important lessons. First of all, one of the major lessons is that it's important to worry not only about your own needs and about like the needs of those close to you, but those also around you. And that sometimes, for instance, he kind of forgot about his own task and instead started worrying about what was happening to the village next to him. So he could have just said, never mind, like I'm on a task, I need to get something, and just forgot about the village. But instead he placed importance on what they needed instead of what he needed. Another thing that he did is that he followed the chief's instructions. He went to the top of the mountain, whereas the other two found something along the way that was easier, and they just took it back when they thought they had found a good solution. He followed the instructions of the chief and went to the top of the mountain, and that's how he was able to find out that the village next to theirs needed help. So these are some very important lessons that are not only important for us to know when we're young, but they're important for us to know for the rest of our lives.
Well, that was really good storytelling, Bethany. You too, Mike. Hey guys, once again, I'm Chloe, and I'm going to tell you guys about fairy tales from the Middle East. I myself, a couple summers ago, was able to go to Jordan, which, as you can see, is the country here. And that's a picture of me in Jordan over there, in the capital, Amman, which is right there. So a lot of stories, there you go. A lot of stories from the Middle East are, they're really old, way older than, a lot of stories from like the European counterparts, because it's been such an integral part of history. So, you might be wondering, why are these stories from the Middle East? Like, I don't think I've ever heard a story from the Middle East. Why are they important? Well, have any of you guys heard of this guy or seen this guy? I'm sure some of you guys have. If you guys don't know, he is from the Disney movie Aladdin, and he's based off of the book 1001 Nights. And this book is a collection of stories from the Middle East during the Islamic Golden Age, which was from the 8th century to the 13th century. So if you think about it, that was right now, we're in the 21st century. So wow, that was like a long time ago. I mean, that's crazy. So as you can see, kind of comparing what the world looks like. So as you can see, that's Jordan. That's where I was. And this is the Middle East area. And comparing it to what it was like during the Golden Age. So as you can see, the borders and the countries looked really different. So a lot of the stories, they're not tied to one specific country today, but to the whole region. And that's what 1001 Nights was. So there are some characteristics of these tales that are in usually with Middle Eastern folk or fairy tales. And so they usually fall into 3 types. So they're either about ordinary human beings having adventures, they're about ordinary human beings interacting with supernatural beings, which are maybe like ghosts or crazy supernatural things like that, or they're animal tales, which is what like Mike was talking about earlier, in which animals kind of act like human beings, or they kind of like have decisions. So unlike the Cherokee or tales from Afghanistan or Iran, these fairy tales were not really about teaching lessons, but were more for fun, They were meant to entertain people, and 1001 Nights is a book that was meant for entertainment and was meant to be told and to keep everybody happy. So the story that I'm going to show you today is called The Fisherman and the Jinni. And this story falls into the category of ordinary humans with supernatural beings, in this case, the Jinni or Jinn, which is a supernatural creature that can take human form. So here's the story.
All right. Is Aladdin in another book besides
The
one that
1000.
you mentioned? Yeah.
Oh, okay. So 1001 Nights is a book that's like that has a ton of stories inside of it. And Aladdin is one of the stories, and so is The Fisherman and the Genie, which is one that you heard.
And why did Chief Sky say that the three men had to take his place? Why he was looking for a new chief?
He was very old, and he knew that he wouldn't be able to do it much longer, so he wanted to find a good replacement while he was still able to make the decision.
And they're asking about the moral of the story of the fisherman and the genie.
Okay.
What that one's trying to teach, or maybe just entertain.
Yeah. So while, overall a lot of fairy tales in the Middle East weren't meant to teach a moral lesson, you can definitely get one about arrogance. Like the genie was like, I can be greater than a mountain, or I can be small, I can be anything I want. And that's what eventually got himself stuck back in the bottle. So there's definitely a moral story to that one.
All right. And why did the genie want to kill the first person he saw?
All right. Yeah, I actually know the answer to that one. So you asked why the genie wanted to kill the first person that he saw. Well, because what you heard was basically a simplified tale of the story, because it's kind of long. But basically what had happened was that the genie was stuck in a bottle, and that he initially, for the first 100 years, he was like, if someone were to set me free from this bottle, I will grant them like all these riches and stuff like that. But as time went on, he got very frustrated that he wasn't let out of the bottle. So eventually he got angry and was like, I will kill the first person that like opens this bottle. And unfortunately, Abdul opened the bottle at the wrong time. So.
And they want you to kind of explain again why the last guy was the one chosen as chief in your story.
Sure. So he was chosen because the chief realized that he, first of all, followed his instructions, while the other two really didn't follow his instructions. They kind of took the easy way out. But he also respected the fact that he was not only worried about their people, but he was worried about, other tribes near them. And he wanted to take care of not only their tribe, but everyone else. He saw that he was selfless, and he thought that that would make him a good leader.
Okay. And how did you find these fables or choose these ones? Why do you guys, how you found them, and why you decided to tell them?
Well, I can also speak a little bit of Persian. So we actually learned to read and write Persian by reading these stories, even as an adult. So that's how we teach language, just like we teach to you guys. We start with stories and they get more complex. So I had heard this story before, and since it's very similar to the tortoise and the hare, I thought I would share it with you.
I actually had a Cherokee teacher read the story to me. So I liked it a lot, and I thought it taught a good lesson. So I wanted to share it with you guys.
Yeah, I found my story through a lot of research, a lot of fairy tales, because I definitely wanted to do something from 1001 Nights because it's probably the most famous book. But I wasn't sure which, and I thought that this one had like a really good kind of beginning, middle, end to it that I wanted to share with you guys.
I don't know if you guys have any recommendations of other stories that you know, or other books from those countries that you would recommend to them for K-12, or we can also send it to them later if you have any other ideas.
Well, sometimes it can be difficult because a lot of the stories from Persia haven't really been translated in English, so you have to kind of read them in their original language. They've done a few, but not as many as, say, 1001 Nights, which is more popular. So we'll have to find some and send it to you guys.
So there's like a lot of different books of different compilations of these stories. I learned most of the stories that I know from a book called the Cherokee Stories of the Turtle Island Liars Club, because the Cherokee actually don't have a word for storytelling, so they refer to themselves as liars because they're telling a story that might not have necessarily actually happened. And I think it's a really great book. So yeah.
I guess, nothing really comes to mind, like, especially, but I feel that a lot of other stories from 1001 Nights, they have a lot of stories to choose from if you're interested.
And they want to know why you guys chose the places you went to, if you went somewhere else, or maybe tell a little bit more about your connection to the countries.
Well, I've been to Afghanistan a number of times, and I was also taught the language, so I'm familiar with that. And a lot of people haven't been there, so it was kind of something new to talk about and to share. So that's why I chose Afghanistan.
I chose Eastern Band of Cherokee because I live very close to there and grew up going there. I also took a Cherokee class at UNC recently that was really interesting, and also my great grandmother as Cherokee. So that's another reason.
That's cool. Yeah, I chose Jordan because, as I said earlier, I went and traveled to Jordan a couple summers ago. I had the opportunity to learn Arabic there, and it was great. I learned so much. So I encourage you guys, if you guys have any languages you want to know, look for countries that speak that language because it really opens your eyes.
Perfect segue. They want to know if you can say something for them in a different language, either just hello or how are you, or just something simple. If you
Introduce yourselves.
Share. Yeah.
Let's see. Well, a phrase they'll often say is "Bache ye gaba helihu khadan," which means "boys and girls be good." So that's what they tell little kids. So make sure you're good.
So I know very little Cherokee, but they refer to kind of the land that they live on in Eastern Band as Anigadu Wagi, which means the land given to the people from God.
Yeah, and a common greeting is Assalamu alaikum, and saying, hi, my name is Chloe. Ismi, Chloe. And yeah, I guess basic greeting like that.
And they asked how old some of the folktales are. I know you mentioned yours was from the 8th century, but I know they're very old. You might not have the exact time.
Yeah, we're not really sure. I mean, this part of the world around Iran and Afghanistan is so old that it goes back to like the ancient Greeks and even before then. So some of the first people lived in that region. So the stories could be maybe 3,000-4,000 years. They're not really sure, and they're passed down, and slightly things change and everything. So I really don't know. Very, very, very old, older than all of us here.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, same for the Cherokee. They've been living in the United States way before it was the United States. So we really don't know exactly when, but we know that they're very old.
Are there any interesting or different foods in any of these places that you'd like to tell us about, or from these cultures?
Yeah, the food is interesting. There's a lot of interesting foods in that region. They eat something called habzi khodan, which is a type of like dip. The thing you guys might be familiar with, it's also in the Middle East, is like hummus. They also do kebabs, jello kebab, which is a type of lamb. They take pieces of meat, they put a metal spike through it, and they grill it. So that started to become a little bit popular here in America, but not as popular as hamburgers yet. But,
yeah.
So
It's getting there.
So, I mean, Cherokee is in the United States, so they eat mostly the same things that we do. I guess traditionally they had a lot of corn-based dishes. They have a bread called fry bread that's delicious, but mostly they eat the same things that we do.
Yeah, in Jordan, it's very similar to, I guess, a lot of the food from like different Persian countries. I would say mainly a lot of the food they eat has chicken and rice in it. Chicken is a very popular meat in the Middle East, so yeah.
A lot of lamb also.
Oh yeah, lamb.
They eat a lot of lamb.
Lamb is very popular as well.
And how long have you been participating in Carolina Navigators, or maybe why you wanted to participate?
Well, we've been doing this now for a few months at least.
Since end of August, beginning of September.
Yeah, end of August. So it sounded like an interesting program. So I thought I would give it a shot and see how I could help out and see what I could learn. So yeah. I
love teaching, and I wanted to kind of share my knowledge about Cherokee because it's not something that we always learn about in school. So I thought it was important to talk about.
Yeah, I interned here over the summer, and because I thought this organization was really great in its mission to definitely reach to you guys and show you guys all different cultures around the world that, it might be harder to learn about. But yeah, that's basically why I joined Carolina Navigators.
Let me say, do all folk tales have morals?
Some do, some don't, especially in these regions. Some of the tales in Persian are actually for adults, and they're really, really long, and they don't really teach. They're really just for entertainment. So, but a lot of the ones for children have more of a moral tale.
For the Cherokee, they either do have a moral, most of them do, or they explain how something came to be. There's a lot of stories about why animals are the way they are. Like there's a story explaining why rabbits' ears are so long, or why possums play dead. So they don't necessarily have morals, but they do always teach something.
Yeah, and I would say in the Middle East, as I said earlier, a lot of it was a lot of stories are for more entertainment than to teach lessons. But if you do get a lesson out of it, I mean, it's not a bad thing.
It's always a good thing. Yeah.
It's always good.
And if you guys want to each just tell like a little bit of some basic facts about the countries or the cultures that you're familiar with, just give them a little bit of more information.
Well, Afghanistan is an interesting country. It's very, very old. It's they found ruins there dating back 6,000 years. So, they had, for example, giant Buddhas that were carved in the side of a mountain that have since been destroyed, unfortunately. But there's about 30 million people there. It's about roughly the size of Texas. So it's a pretty good size area. A lot of mountains, some of the tallest mountains in the world border that region. So it's an interesting place. A lot of in America, there's probably about 5,000 to 6,000 Afghans who live here. There's more Iranians who live here, but so you don't really interact as much with these cultures.
So the Eastern Band of Cherokee has been here, for way longer than even the United States has been here. They were here before we had Christopher Columbus or anything like that. And there's an Eastern Band, and then there's a band in Oklahoma as well. And they got separated via the Trail of Tears, I'm sure many of you have heard of. The Eastern Band were able to remain where they're at, even though they tried to forcibly remove them because they were able to hide in the mountains where they still live, because like a lot of the soldiers who were supposed to be removing them just couldn't find them because they weren't as good at hiding and climbing mountains in the way that Cherokee were. So they ended up remaining where they are, basically by hiding. So that's just a really interesting story about why there's an Eastern Band and why there's a band in Oklahoma too.
Didn't know that. Yeah, Jordan is a country, as I said earlier, in the Middle East. You might have seen earlier, it's near like countries like Saudi Arabia. But yeah, it's a very old region, very old area. In fact, it has like one of the 7 wonders of the world called Petra. So if you want to visit all 7 wonders, then you're going to have to go to Jordan. It also has like a lot of interesting landmarks with it. It's right beside the Dead Sea, which is that one body of water where you just float because it's so salty. So it's really cool over there. They speak Arabic, mainly in Jordan, and there's a really big refugee population. In Jordan, a lot of them are Palestinian. So it's really interesting to see all of these different people from the region connect in one place.
Another interesting thing I want to say about the Cherokee is that only about 250 people in Cherokee actually speak Cherokee anymore. So they're very concerned about the language kind of dying out. So it's a very important language to learn.
Okay. Let me see if there's any more questions. That might be it. I was going to ask if there's any more questions to type in the chat.
Anything else you want to know?
Yeah.
All right. If not, you guys can.
All right.
All right. Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Have a good day.
All right, we will be back at 2 p.m. For another presentation on some important landmarks and places that are in Panama, India, Poland, and Canada. So hopefully we'll see you guys back in a little bit. Bye.
Bye.
All right.